Hey, Allissa here. Um, I'm going to have to speak over some rain coming in. So I'm speaking a little bit louder because I've watched a couple of my video letters to you, Robert and Andreas, and I realize that some of my voice gets a little. So I'll try to speak up. Let's see. So much has happened since the last video when I was going up to Kiruna to help my daughter with graduate. No, not help her graduate, but watch her graduate and then pack up her stuff. So today is Monday, June 23rd. And not only has a lot happened with my daughter, but in the whole freaking world, because June 21st could change the course of history. So we won't talk about that because you can watch the news as much as me. And that's not fun. So you'd rather watch me, I think. So I have a book that I spoke about last time, um, 2 times ago, I think in video letter number 3. And that is Ian Waterman's Pride and a Daily Marathon. So with the forward from Oliver Sacks. So thank you, Robert, for being at the British Fascist Symposium and telling us all there about Ian because, so, yep. Chapter number 2, the gastric flu. Yeah, they said it was a virus. And then he gets a high fever, and Ian wakes up finally in a hospital bed, and he can't move for several years. Can't even, lights are off, and he just falls apart. And there's a really cool YouTube video um, done by an actor about what it would be like for us to not feel our own limbs. I don't know if I can find it, but I'm gonna try because it's awesome. If not, if I can't find it real quick, then I'm gonna put it in the show description so you can show it to anyone you want. But it is so well done with this actor explaining what it's like not to be able to feel your limbs and only using vision. So what else did we talk about? Oh, we talked about emotional regulation, and we talked about the pyramid of learning from Mary Williams and Shelley Williams and Mary Schellenberger, how your engine runs. Mary Williams and Shelley Williams and Mary Schellenberger. I think that's what it is. Anyway, that'll be in the show notes too, because great pyramid of learning. Emotional regulation. And this book is written by a PhD, OTD, OTR/L. So, and I used to know at one time what all those initials stood for, but basically in the United States, people with those titles, they have to have a doctorate now. Um, it's not an orthopedic, it's an OT. It's like a PT, but an OT works with people that have movement disorders. My mom, who couldn't walk after a while, had a designated OT that worked with her on how to grip, how to bring her spoon to her mouth. And these OTs are wonderful people that work with children that have some learning development issues. And so now in the United States, you need to have a doctorate in order to have this specialty. Occupational therapist. I knew it would come to me. It was somewhere up there. Yeah. Occupational therapist has to have a doctorate now. And this book is well written. and it's well written to somebody like me. But she talks about sensory processing disorders. And Dr. Jean Aries, sensory integration in the child in 1979. So this isn't new information by any means, but the history of multi-sensory integration, the history of multisensory integration. The nervous system then defines behavior. But how does the nervous system get the information that is processed up here in order to have the behavior? And that's the next section, because in video letter number 4, we talked about those two pictures, the blue man with the white line around him, and Williams and Schellenberger's pyramid of learning, which is a model, it is a brilliant model on how sensory processing disorders can be overcome or help children regulate their own emotional health. And as Yuval Harari, Professor Harari has said, we need to teach young people how to develop emotional resilience and emotional development, as well as physical development, and how to throw a ball, how to get along well with others, how to have an opinion, but maybe not yell it or voice it because the person in front of you think is wrong. That brings me to two other things. Just this morning, it was so exciting. It's just like two pieces of the puzzle came together just this morning. And the first one is from Science Friday. Now, Science Friday is a wonderful program from the public broadcasting system in the United States. And an affiliate station, WGN, does this Science Friday. And Ira Flatow is the host, and then they have other hosts, but it's a great podcast. And if everything goes to poop in the United States, the US Congress has already voted in one of the legislative branches, the House, and quite a few members voted to not fund public broadcasting anymore, which means if it goes to the Senate, and now the Senate approves to rescind funding that was promised for 2 years, my beloved Science Friday might go bye-bye. Okay, but here's the cool thing. Let me share this. So here we have the scientist, and I'll give you a Science Friday link in the show notes so you can go and read it and read the transcript, because I'm not going to do a good job explaining what she discovered, but let me give you the basis. So this is just this morning that I listened to it, and it does say June 23rd, so it's a brand new episode, and it's called The Leap. Do you realize ... That's impossible. So she's from India, and she wanted to take classes in the United States. So she went to, I think, Stanford, and she became a graduate student. And she studied physics, and she's one of the very few women in physics. And the thing is, what she says in the beginning of the interview is physics is a dog eat dog world, and it's usually white men and white older men, and not so many women involved in the science. But she discovered something new, so it opened up a whole new paradigm on how physics and quantum matter is considered. And then when she called one of her professors, and they said, do you know that that's impossible? So she's down in Florida using this heavy duty magnet. And because heavy duty magnets can affect how electrons' paths move differently. And so what I found out from this cool piece of information is, what is an oscillation? I've heard of oscillations so many times, and it's just like, I don't know what an oscillation is. So I find this part at 12 minutes and 41 seconds, and she basically boils it down, and it's brilliant information. This woman from India that I've never met, that I absolutely love, she says oscillations are just the electrons' paths, and we lovingly call them wiggles. So when an electron wiggles in a certain way, it's usually very predictable. But what she found is that when they use this heavy magnet, the predictability goes poof out the window. So magnets affect electrons. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. But now there's a shift in the old school thinking and moving in a different direction, or thinking in a different direction. I should say, in this case, a better direction. So what was the next piece of the puzzle that I found out just today? So that comes with, let's see, that comes with this particular, I think this is, yes, Adam Smith with Nobel Prize. He's British. He's interviewing Michael Robash from the 2017 Nobel Prize, where he and this group of two others, so a group of three, discovered the circadian rhythms in fruit flies. And well, there's other Nobel Prize lectures from them. And I don't remember which of the three scientists it was that did this lecture. I should remember it. But he basically said they were getting so frustrated with not finding what they wanted. The scientists said, jokingly, off with their heads. So basically, they cut off the fruit fly's head, and lo and behold, they found this oscillation. And now, because of Science Friday, I realize that if we can lovingly call oscillations wiggles, it's so much easier. So Adam Smith says, oh, so evolution has preserved the same systems that are in fruit flies in us humans. So their research into circadian rhythms can be brought over to us. So these fruit fly mechanisms turned out to be transferable to humans, and evolution preserved those systems. And what I'm thinking is, we must consider that when nature finds a way that works, she preserves it. Why not? And maybe even in humans makes it better. So what was the next slide that I wanted to share with you and what he said? Yeah, here's my window says that you're not seeing. Oh, there it is. Yes, my window says you're seeing it. Yeah. Okay, so here is Michael Robash. I think it's Rosbash. It's written. I think it's Robash is how it's pronounced. 2017 winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology. And he talks about this oscillation, and he says, think of the oscillation as a ticking of a metronome clock, and that we always carry it around with us, and it always ticks. So when we understand about circadian rhythm in our own bodies, we can do a much better job with individuals that have sleeping disorders, and when they take medicine, because there's maybe a better time during the day for someone to take medicine depending on their own circadian rhythm. It's mind-blowing new medicine, that medicine just keeps on happening. So there's two pictures of the puzzle that I put together today. And that brings me to Yuri Hassan. Yuri Hassan has a TED Talk, and that TED Talk is from a long time ago. But if you remember this pyramid of learning, the foundation right above the central nervous system is our senses. So the sense of touch, the sense of vision, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the sense of hearing. So those five primary senses are developed pretty much in the womb. And as Yuri will explain, when physical entrainment, which entrainment is a hard word to describe, but for anyone listening and like, what does that mean in English? That too. But entrainment is like the synchronization. And it's a synchronizing to learn. So when physical entrainment synchronizes, then we have neural entrainment. And the way I'm thinking of that is physical stimuli syncs, maybe those five senses sync up and they all couple to deliver information that then is learned. So learn. So this is how the central nervous system takes in information from the outside stimulus. Emotions are produced when we feel things, but then also after this is learned, then therefore the behavior. Because we use, like Holly Klein said, we use all these previous experiences from before as predictors of how we should feel. And Danielle is somebody that we'll talk about, hopefully in this video, so that you can understand the thought process and why touch is so foundational to our rudimentary way of how we learn. I'm pretty sure I'm going out on a limb, but I'm sure there's scientists that will back me up that it's the first sense to come online. It maybe sound, but that's later. We'll talk about that. So wait just a second. Let me see if I can find Yuri Hassan on the TED stage. I got the one with Yuri. So I'm going to share my screen. Yep, that's the one you're seeing too. So Yuri Hassan is a neuroscientist. He's on the TED stage in 2016 talking about how physical entrainment leads to neural entrainment. And the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because Michael Robash talked about the oscillations. Think of oscillations as metronomes. So here we go. Yuri Hassan, that we transmit information to our brain through physical entrainment. Physical entrainment is stimuli. So the eye, vision, is light stimulus, visual stimulus. And if you remember from what we had talked about earlier with Francis McClone, where this information goes to is the same spot as that soft, slow touch. So a slow touch system and this coupled together in the same spot in the brain. So a baby that's born, you have to figure out how to turn its head because it's taking in so much information through its eyes and through its sound, through its skin, but also that soft touch, that slow touch, and the eyes, they couple together. And when they sing, it clicks. a metronome clicks. Okay. So let's see. So Yuri is talking all sorts of things. I think it's at 3 minutes. So they took people into the fMRI scan. They had a very talented storyteller, and that storyteller, yeah. But, so now the storytelling is simple. One listener and one brain area, the audio cortex, processes sound that come from the ear. And as you can see in this particular instance, the ear is picking up sound waves. It goes to an area of the brain as the story unfolds. And usually this is in your native language. Because as I can tell you, learning second language or a third language, maybe third is easier. Second language at 43, like I did, it took about 10 years before I could actually speak okay Swedish and understand a story. So anyway, so this comes through in their native language, native tongue, is processed by the brain, and a person learns the story. And we used to tell stories all the time. And you sit around a campfire eons ago, what else would we do? Because, gosh, we don't have Netflix and YouTube to go to. So people always told stories. So we have listener 1 and listener 2. You can go ahead and watch this on your own. And we start the scan of the brains before the story starts. And they're simply lying down and waiting for the story to begin. And as you can see, the brain's going up and down with each one of them, but the responses are different. They're not in sync. However, immediately as the story is starting, something amazing is happening. Oh man, of course it's going to be.
So I'm banging out my story and I know it's good.
Yeah. And then, so here, Yuri Hassan starts to talk about how things start to sync. So the brain patterns across all the listeners, they're listening to the story, and the effect when everything syncs is neural entrainment. And the listener then understands the story, can process the story, has an emotion from the story, has a behavior from the story. And that is to explain neural entrainment. But before we get to neural entrainment, Yuri says, let's talk about physical entrainment. And this is where the metronomes come in. And those metronomes, I absolutely love. He really talks about this in such a way. So I can't play a video because there's copyright issues as soon as I show you this video level. And so you're going to have to go on your own and listen around 3 minutes and 24 seconds. But he takes 5 metronomes and they're clicking out of sync. They're each going in their own rhythm. And it's loud and it's noisy. But when he puts these, he syncs up. He syncs those metronomes together. And he places them on 2 cylinders, and these cylinders start to rotate because of the vibration of the metronome. And eventually, you can see this from here. Every metronome is in a different pattern. But now, as these cylinders rotate, everything starts to synchronize. And that synchronization stays. And what he's saying is, this is driving neural entrainment, that simply speaking or hearing, vision, touch, when all of those, when individually, everything, the metronome inside of us, our rhythm, our oscillation, our wiggles, when they all when they think we get them, it's a light bulb that clicks. And you can see when it's bigger, when this light bulb clicks, this samaya, this true self, and this ability to learn, that is so much more heightened. What happens if some of these ways that we take in information gone? Do you remember probably time when I talked about she gave the example of a kitten, and in the kitten's first 2 weeks of life is this critical window for a development, and that critical window of development is for vision is necessary in order to develop vision. So the kitten's eyes were sutured shut. Don't know the researcher that did this, but obviously Mr. Image wouldn't be alive. Cruelty. And they were sutured shut. And then at the end of 2 weeks, after the critical development window is over, he unsutures them so the kitten's eyes open. But all of the processing information that could have been gained in those 2 weeks didn't happen. So the hardware is there, the software was never good. And we're going to talk about Daniel's software and how it was written to, and how that stayed with her for a lifetime to, quote unquote, develop environmental autism. And I'm using those air quotes because that's what the scientists said. I will just share with you, there's a story